You might be wondering what physics and Feynman's lectures in physics have to do with musical artists. Well, that's what this video is about. But first I should warn you, this video is the second half of a video I made on misconceptions in deriving the Poynting vector, with extra musical numbers.
You want to be great, then you gotta create a musical.
If you wish to know more about the Poynting vector and why I think it is such a weak model, please watch that video. However, you don't need to know anything about physics or the Poynting vector to watch this video. Frankly, my Poynting vector video was made as a gift offering for physicists and advanced engineers, and this video is a gift offering for musical artists. Not that you have to be one or another to enjoy either video, just pointing out who my intended audience is. Now that I've cleared that up, are you ready? Let's go!
Electricity, 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 electricity.
I would like to start with a bit of my personal history with Feynman's lectures in physics. When I was a junior at the University of Chicago, called a third year, I was conned by my boyfriend to spend a whopping $120 for the hardback version of Feynman's lectures in physics. Then, considering how much he and others hyped up Feynman's lectures, especially the section on electricity and magnetism, I tried to work through the book. Although I really tried, I could not make heads or tails of it and gave up after a couple of weeks. I'm sure many of you had a similar experience. Luckily, I was in my fourth year of advanced physics work. I had doubled up. And I had an excellent E&M teacher, thanks Herr Mueller, who used a decent textbook, Wagnus's Electromagnetic Fields, although I prefer Griffith's. So I knew I could do the material. However, I didn't think to blame Feynman. After all, he was supposed to be the best teacher who had ever lived. Instead, I figured I couldn't learn without a great teacher and gave up on self-improvement through textbooks, which meant that for many years that I was out of school, I didn't learn any new physics. However, I continued to learn through looking through the internet, learning from other people, and obsessively thinking about everything that I love, especially things like music and movies. So many movies.
Ask me why.
Why?
Let me explain. Warning, this is going to get a little bit personal and dark. See, I was born to a family dealing with extreme trauma, as I had a 3-year-old sister who had drowned in a pool the year before I was born. My father was determined to push the family through this tragedy while being a very busy lawyer. So he focused on me to bring the family through, as I was the only non-traumatized person in the family. Now that may sound horrific, but actually I had a lovely and creative childhood. Aside from school that I was mixed on, I loved learning, but I hated busy work and the stifling of originality. Anyway, the main way my dad and I communicated was through movies, and we had a particular fondness for musicals. We would rate them, evaluate them, improve them in our minds, and argue endlessly about them. My dad was an incredibly skilled lawyer and knew the power of truthful storytelling. But he also knew that fiction and humor were usually the best window to learn that art. That is also how I learned that storytelling and kind humor was the best way for me to help my family and friends. Also, my dad would say that a lawyer's only currency is their honesty and would never exaggerate, even in family stories, a practice I follow as well, aside from when I'm having a tiff with my hubby. Because of that, we were always searching for the juiciest true stories and using our skills from examining movies to tell them to the best of our abilities. When I was a kid, I was taken to a science museum called the Exploratorium on a school trip. At the Exploratorium, they have tons of kiosks with different hands-on experiments. I did the do and notice and then read the what is going on section. I immediately thought it was cool and grabbed a friend to show her. That is how I found that teaching physics was so joyful. By the time I got to college, I learned that advanced physics has no busy work and tons of creative debate. So I was in heaven. However, I then found the research part of graduate school to be isolating and pointless and went through 3 different graduate programs before becoming a high school physics teacher. Luckily, I found teaching high school to be amazing. I learned so much from them. My God, you can tell with a room of 34 young teens when they get it and when they don't. And when they get it, you can feel the delight. However, around 8 years ago, after taking a year off from maternity leave, my new principal said that she didn't need me. And if I insisted on returning, I would be forced to teach freshman algebra instead of physics. I know it all worked out for the best, but I'm still mad. Anyway, that is how I decided to take a break from teaching and instead try to write a book about the history of electricity to help non-scientists get an understanding of basic electrical distribution through its history. By the way, my mom came up with the title. Honestly, I only started this channel to get people to buy my book, but then I fell in love with the medium. I can talk about whatever I want for as long as I want to. I can follow any tangent that interests me for as long as it interests me. I really don't understand how more physicists don't want to make YouTube videos. The freedom is fantastic. Plus, putting my material in a visual medium and getting such great pushback and feedback has made me a much better physicist and made my book and later videos much better as well. I think of each video as a mini movie or maybe even a mini musical with a discovery process like the dialogue and the equations like the songs. By the way, I'm not the only one who sees music in physics. For example, in 1948, Einstein recalled that when he first heard Niels Bohr's model of atoms, he said that it had the highest form of musicality in the sphere of thought. In truth, I see movies and music in everything, not just physics. It's basically become part of how I think. That is why most of my videos are so cinematic. Now, you might think you hate musicals, but I don't believe you, as everyone loves music and everyone loves stories. So ergo, everyone must love some musicals. If you like music videos, you like musicals. Even if you don't, I bet you there are musical numbers in movies that aren't musicals that are your favorite part. To give 3 random examples, how about the twist and shout dance sequence in Ferris Bueller's Day Off? The dance sequence in 500 Days of Summer after he finally gets together with his dream girl, and my personal favorite, the Inquisition song in The History of the World Part 1. If you like any of these or have ever enjoyed any of Bollywood, you like musicals. Even deaf people love musicals. In fact, I randomly saw this ASL interpreter named Amber Galloway Galejo on YouTube and learned that with the right interpreter, sign language can create a deeper understanding of music than just hearing the music can. Seriously, her interpretation with friends of Seasons of Love gives me chills. And her interpretation of Baby Got Back makes me laugh with so much joy. The reason I'm mentioning this so much is because I am currently only inspired by the physics from physicists who lived long, long ago, but I'm endlessly motivated by musical artists. I'm so frustrated by people who are given so many gifts by musicians and who don't bother to think about them. I understand about people being scared of physics is often taught in a cruel way, but music and movies are only popular if they are easy to digest. So think about the movies or music that inspire you. It's so easy. Just watch a reaction video or an interpretation on YouTube. Yes, even if you're really good at math. How can you teach others if you won't learn from them? Okay, end of rant. In October of 2022, I published my first book, and I have the detailed outline on 5 more. Honestly, my biggest problem now is focusing on 2 or 3 projects when I have dozens I want to develop. One of the surprises of starting a YouTube channel and following those odd tangents is that I learned that with a lot of work and historical context, I could understand the core points and derivations of some of the most notoriously difficult original concepts in physics and engineering. Heck, I could learn and explain subjects like electrical distribution and radio and astronomy, where I've never taken a class. Dankeschön, Herr Müller. Even so, I was terrified to study Maxwell's papers. After all, if Feynman was preferable and I couldn't get through Feynman, what hope did I have to get through Maxwell? Then, around 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to visit the Spark Museum in Washington State, where the owner let me see some original historical papers, most of which I was far too scared to touch. Let's take a visit.
Kathy, what's the significance behind Maxwell's equations? Why are they important?
Oh gosh. Maxwell's equations are the foundation of physics. They relate all electrical and magnetic equations into 20 relations, which would then changed into 4 relations. And it changes everything from electricity being from electric charges and magnetic things into fields. Well, Maxwell called them fields. Faraday called them lines of force. And no physicist can call themselves a physicist without struggling through these equations.
Yeah, or engineer too. Electrical engineers have to go through it too.
Do they? Yeah, it's part of, and after Maxwell's equations, when people start believing in Maxwell's equations and they called themselves Maxwellians, it inspired all of modern physics.
Yeah.
After we looked at the books, we spent a little time in the museum, and then we went to lunch, and then we went to the Saturday electrical show. I have to say, I spent much of the show feeling very nervous. What happened was, they told me that they usually took volunteers before the show to agree to go in the cage of doom at the culmination of the show, but decided to have us just do the cage instead. I wasn't nervous about the cage of doom. I was thrilled. What made me nervous is that I was invited to do the Van de Graaff machine, and I worried that I wouldn't be invited to do the cage too. Luckily, towards the end of the show, both Jeffs and I were invited up for the cage, but Jeff Parisi pretended to be nervous so that he could film us. I then accidentally totally upstaged Jeff Bahari and was punished by Jeff's video being super blurry. After the talk, I learned that anyone over 18 years old could do the cage for like $10. So my nervousness was pointless, which is how I got a nice video of the cage from the outside. When a huge Tesla coil was operating, you could sort of feel the electricity in the air, so to speak. It wasn't a violent thing, more of a subtle effect. Like in a storm where you feel like the hairs on your arms going up. The weird thing is the second you get in the cage, you can feel that the electricity in the air is gone. I was told to touch the side of the cage, but I could tell that unlike a plasma ball, the electricity didn't see me. I've done many physics videos where I had to just trust that the physics would work. In this one, I could feel the physics working. Here's my video of the event. We believe in science. And Faraday. Oi.
Are you ready to cage?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, you guys under the cage, clear. Clear.
So that was my reaction to the Spark Museum. I've realized in all of my videos, and this is my 85th video, I've never made one on the history and physics of the Faraday cage. So that is next time on the Lightning Tamers. So that's why I started to study the history and physics of the Faraday cage. And that is how I discovered that in 1837, Michael Faraday created the idea of electric fields and the concept of a dielectric because of his creation of the Faraday cage. Not only that, but by delving into Faraday's 1837 work, I started to feel that I truly understood Gauss's law for the first time. That is why I decided to take the plunge into understanding Maxwell's derivation of his laws, one equation at a time. It turned out to be the perfect method for me. Although I thought I would make a video about each equation, it turned out that one was enough to crack the whole can of worms wide open. Finally, I felt able to tackle the math Maxwell used, called quaternions, and study how it was transformed through Maxwell's equations into vector calculus. Then, as I understood Maxwell's odd language and quirks, I could also decipher not only Maxwell, but other early physicists' electricity and magnetism papers, like Hertz, Heaviside, Lorentz, Minkowski, Einstein, and of course, Poynting. However, when I went back to Feynman's lectures, I still couldn't figure out why it was so strange. It just made no sense. Then it finally hit me. Feynman's lectures, to put a fine point on it, are absolute gibberish. I know what you've been told. I have been told the same thing, but we were misinformed. It's like the song Nothing from the musical A Chorus Line. The teacher is asking them to be on a bobsled or be an ice cream cone, and everyone's going brr, except one person who feels nothing. And then
went to church praying Santa Maria, help me feel it, help me feel it, pretty please. And a voice from down at the bottom of my soul came up to the top of my head. And a voice from down at the bottom of my soul, here is what it said. This man is nothing, this course is nothing. If you want something, go find a better class. And when you find one, you'll be an actress. And I assure you that's what finally came to pass.
it turns out that can happen in physics too. I mean, just compare how Sommerfeld, who recall was the first major physicist to declare that B, not H, was the main magnetic field, made his argument in 1948, compared to Feynman's weak declaration of the same point 15 years later. Sommerfeld gave a list of arguments and included that he was contradicting his friend Max Planck's published opinion, and started an international debate on the subject. Then Feynman just pretends the debate over the magnetic field didn't even occur, aside from some nameless people who, as he mentioned as an aside in chapter 36, were confused by some simple math to think that H was the magnetic field. By the way, here's a little list of a few people who thought that H was the main magnetic field. John Henry Poynting, Heinrich Hertz, Oliver Heaviside, Hendrik Lorentz, Hermann Minkowski, Max Planck, Niels Bohr, and of course that simple-minded nobody, Albert Einstein. In addition, Feynman only introduced the H field and the permeability of a vacuum mu naught in chapter 36 as a convenient math shorthand to explain ferromagnetic or highly magnetic materials. And then he argues against the use of the permeability in a vacuum mu naught as just one more constant to keep track of. Otherwise, he replaced every instance of H with epsilon naught c squared b and every instance of D with epsilon naught e, even though that is only true in a vacuum with a constant magnetic field and is more complicated. That is how Feynman changed the Poynting vector to such a strange form, which isn't that upsetting to me because I believe it is a weak model. And also how he changed Gauss's law, Ampere's law, energy density, and in an act of pure insanity, Feynman just drops the equation for the velocity of an electromagnetic wave in a medium, v equals 1 over the square root of epsilon mu. It is just gone, kaput, vanished. Yes, you heard that right. Feynman just completely ignores Maxwell's equation that demonstrates the relation between electromagnetic light and the electric and magnetic properties of the medium. But how did Feynman justify changing what are considered some of the most fundamental equations in physics in his textbook? He didn't give any explanation. He just stated it like it was a fact. Well, that's not completely true. He did mention a bit about changing the equations in the introduction to his textbook. That's where he outright denied he made any changes, writing, quote, "In the first part of the course, dealing with electricity and magnetism, I couldn't think of any really unique or different ways of doing it, of any way that would be particularly more exciting than the usual way of presenting it. So I don't think I did very much in the lectures on electricity and magnetism." Just for comparison, here's how Sommerfeld represented Maxwell's laws in 1948. This is how a very popular physics book from Blaney and Blaney represented Maxwell's laws in 1957. And this is how Feynman presented them in 1963. Note that Faraday's laws of induction and Gauss's law for a magnet, the ones with B's and E's, are exactly the same in all three cases, but the other laws are completely different for Feynman. Just take a moment to compare and contrast. It is astonishing, isn't it? Even worse, Feynman created a new and terrible way of teaching physics. Feynman said that his method of teaching is
completely against history, and it's often complained about physics course there should be in terms of the experiments by which the information was obtained.
His reason for stripping physics of its motivation was
It's necessary to learn all this physics in a limited time. I'm sorry, but we have to lose something. And one thing that we have a tendency to lose in these lectures is the historical experimental development.
But don't worry, Feynman added, any student can learn all about the development of physics on their own, simply and easily.
If you're interested, it's to read the Encyclopedia Britannica, which has excellent articles on many subjects of this kind, or other histories, or other textbooks in electricity and magnetism. Anyway, if you want to know some more, you can always find it out.
No, Feynman, the historical approach isn't wasteful. It is fundamental. It is transformational. It is physics. And then there's how Richard Feynman evaluated his own lectures. He thought it was a disaster. No, really. Feynman wrote that the way the course was given, there wasn't any feedback from the students to the lecturer to indicate how well the lectures were going over. This is indeed a very serious difficulty, and I don't know how good the lectures really are. The whole thing was essentially an experiment. The question, of course, is how well this experiment has succeeded. My own point of view is pessimistic. I don't think I did very well by the students. I think the system is a failure. On that point, I agree. I completely agree. Now, I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and I would ask that you would please, for the love of Faraday, please ask someone else. Reddit has a lovely physics channel. Follow their rules, please. There are websites and Discord servers and tons of online geek hangouts stocked full of people just dying to debate physics. You'll be amazed, and keep bugging them until your questions are answered. If you subscribe to a YouTube science channel or personally know a physicist or advanced engineer, ask them what they think. I want this to be peer-reviewed beyond the level that any scientific idea has ever been peer-reviewed. I have a link to my script with lots of footnotes so you can cut and paste and ask specific questions. Like, is it true that Feynman changed most of Maxwell's equations and then pretended he didn't? Or is it true that D equals epsilon E only works for a dielectric in a constant magnetic field, and E equals negative del phi minus the ADT is the universal equation for the electric field? Or whatever you want to know or want to have clarified. Nothing would help me more than you questioning people's assumptions. Also, if you want to use any of this information or the information on any of my videos to help you create a podcast, a Wikipedia update, and please update Wikipedia. Wikipedia rocks. An article, a video, or a peer-reviewed paper, please do. Include the links for just such a reason. As long as you don't plagiarize me and believe in what you're saying, don't worry about using my ideas in research. In fact, I want you to use my ideas in research. I mean, I would like credit in places where it's appropriate, but that isn't my primary motivation. I literally just want to fight ignorance, cruelty, and elitism and have fun doing it. What could top that? Finally, to my science devotees throughout the world, those of you who love physics and engineering as much as I do, aren't you sick and dismayed with the terrible rise of cruel pseudoscience, fear of science, and outright anti-science belief? Aren't you done with wringing your hands with the ignorance in the world? Don't you want to show that physics isn't illogical, elitist, and
Cruel, screwy, intuitively screwy?
Well, now is your time to shine. Print out the script, read every citation, get together with your smartest and weirdest friends, and stay up all night dissecting my ideas to the bone. And once you've made up your mind, whether you agree with me or not, put it out there in the world. Don't be scared of change. As the mighty Faraday said in his 7th research in electricity, which remember was the inspiration for Maxwell's equations, it is the great beauty of our science, that advancement in it, whether in a degree great or small, Instead of exhausting the subject of research, open the doors to further and more abundant knowledge, overflowing with beauty and utility. For example, if you use the universal electric field equation, not only do you dispel the need for the crazy Poynting vector, but you also get a new equation for light. Rather than separate equations for the electric field, del squared E equals mu epsilon times the second time derivative of E, and a similar equation for the magnetic field, you get one intertwined electromagnetic equation, minus the gradient of the divergence of E minus del squared K equals mu epsilon times the second time derivative of E plus K, where K is just the time derivative of the magnetic momentum A, which is why I'm calling it the magnetic impulse. Now tell me, do you agree? Do you disagree? Can you model this with computers? Can you derive new equations from this? Let's do some physics, baby. This is going to be so much fun. Obviously, I am incredibly busy. However, I want to get the physics word out. So if you want to arrange a filmed colloquia at your university, contact me and let's set something up. In addition, I don't want to ignore the artists, comedians, and artistic engineers. I love talking to artists. You are all so beautifully inquisitive. Honestly, I need you. We need to convince everyone, physicists and non-physicists alike, that physics can be kind and welcoming. Because we have seen what happens when you let cruel Nobel Prize winners take over. Although I feel like I can do it through the history, as Catherine Zeta-Jones so nicely put it,
Now you see me going through it. You may think there's nothing to it, but I simply cannot do it.
therefore, if you have a large platform, either online or on television, or I mentioned you in any way in this video, or you are famous enough that your presence will attract attention and want to discuss this or like literally anything else, I would be delighted to go on your show or have you go on mine and get the physics musical word out. I have like hundreds, maybe thousands of crazy, amazing stories from the past to tell off the top of my head. So we'll have a ton of fun. Also, I will never talk down to you or fake knowledge that I don't have. Note that I absolutely hate elitist snobs. They are insufferable. I have no interest in how smart you are, how much you know about any subject, or how much money you have. Richard Feynman was very smart. Philip Leonard, an actual Nazi, was even smarter and a far better textbook writer. Instead, I care if you are kind, if you are creative, if you are generous, if you are inquisitive, if you are equally as interested in learning from people as you are at sharing your passions with them. I mean, if, as Voltaire said, anyone who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities, then isn't the opposite true as well? Anyone who can help you light the spark of knowledge can help illuminate the goodness in your heart. Okay, as my queen put it in Hairspray.
All right, Miss Buttercup, it's time to wrap this mother up. Oh, you can't stop today as it comes speeding down the track. Child, yesterday is history, and it's never coming back.
So that is my video. I want to apologize for this being my first video in over a year. I had some health issues, although I'm doing much better now. Also, this may sound strange, but when I'm working on something big, I kind of cocoon and I'm terrible at communication. I know that sounds weird, but I'm weird, so that's how it is. I'm sorry about being so bad at communication. This is especially true for my long-suffering patrons. Thank you, patrons. Remember, as Jonathan Larson so eloquently wrote, describing the joys of the artistic or the bohemian life.
The opposite of war isn't peace, it's creation. Viva la vie, poem!
So get cracking! And I'll tell you something else. Neither my country nor myself are young, but I am scrappy as hell, and I believe to my core that my beloved country is scrappy too. All we need to do is get the artists together with the scientists, and we can change the world. And another thing.
Past patiently waiting, passionately smashing every expectation, every action's an act of creation. I'm laughing in the face of casualties of sorrow. For the first time I'm thinking past tomorrow. We gon' rise up, time to take a shot. We gon' rise up, time to take a shot. We gon' rise up, it's time to take a shot. It's time to take a shot. It's time to take a shot. Take a shot. I'm not throwing away my shot.
So I'm not much of a big drinker, but this was an amazing event. And I think I'm not going to throw away my shot. So let's l'chaim. Ready? Oh my gosh. Thanks so much. And as usual, stay safe and curious, my friends.
Yes, I get it now. We'll do a musical. No kidding. A musical. What could be more amazing than a musical? With song and dance and sweet romance. And with a musical we might have half a chance. Oohs, ahs, big applause with everyone cheering for us. And for some unexplainable reason, the crowd goes wild every time when dancers kick in unison in one big wonderful line. And then you got yourself a musical. A musical. La 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 paloozical. With flashy style and a big face smile. A snazzy band, some jazzy hands. I swear that I'll cross my heart, hope to die. If it isn't a doozy, take it from me. They'll be flocking to see your starlet won't quit. Big hit musical. A big hit musical.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.